Internet, Eric here. I've been wanting to talk about this movie for a while. Spoilers, is one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time, and I've mentioned how much I've enjoyed it. Just in random streams, most notably the Night Watch Zone, once or twice. And sadly, the reason why I'm going to discuss it now is because James Caan passed, and this is, I mean, he's been in so much. This is probably, honestly, it's my favorite James Caan movie just because I'm a huge sci-fi nut, huge buddy cop film nut, I guess how you would say. Today, sad reasons, I'm going to talk about Alienation. Now, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I discuss plot spoilers, specific scenes, what have you. This came out in 1988. The basic plot of Alienation is in 1988. The movie takes place in 91. In 1988, in the Mojave Desert, a huge spacecraft landed and they landed. They're not able to get. It's not able to get back home. Inside was thousands and thousands of humanoid type aliens. They look like that, you know. And it was a slave ship. They were bred for hard labor. They would learn how to adapt to different environments. We find out they're super strong. They're super smart, like a 5-year-old would be in like sixth grade, that type of thing. And this movie takes place 3 years later, and they've now assimilated, become part of society. You know, they're in our schools, they work at our jobs. You know, they live with us, and we are following Detective Matthew Sykes, played by James Caan, and he and his partner get caught up in a convenience store robbery. The aliens are called Newcomers. A newcomer is murdered by two other newcomers, and in that process, in that situation, James Caan's partner Tug is killed. Eventually, the first newcomer police detective comes into their district, and James Caan, this newcomer is played by Mandy Patinkin from Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride, and James Caan volunteers to be his partner in hopes that this newcomer, we're going to call George, in hopes that this newcomer could shed some light on the newcomers behind the murder of his partner. And there's much more to it. First off, like I said, I love this movie. It's a great buddy cop film. It's a great science fiction movie. First off, he's James Caan. You know, he is this grumpy old bastard, like he always is. And I like that he works very well. First off, we know he's racist towards newcomers because when we're first introduced to him, he and Tug is his partner, like I said, they're driving through Los Angeles, and it's funny how Sykes, James Caan, he's trash talking the newcomers. He's calling them slags, which is the slang term for basically like the N word. You know what I mean? Or any type of derogatory racist name. And it's funny how he's trashing all these newcomers, and his partner's a black man. So that just shows kind of how ignorant he is. But he is also very likable. He's very loyal because he wants to find Tug's killer. And I like how eventually he he volunteered to be partnered up with George. We'll get to George to help to try to solve Tug's murder. But eventually, he, of course, because this happens in all these type of racist movies, especially with cops or whatever, um, comes around to respecting newcomers. And I wouldn't say he enjoys newcomers, but he comes to respect them and accept them into his life. So James Caan's great. Mandy Patinkin as George. First off, let's talk about the name George. A lot of these newcomers, because it's kind of like when immigrants came to Ellis Island, they were given new names, new identities, and stuff like that. After about I think even Sykes said by newcomer number 1,000, they got a little punch drunk, giving out names. Rudyard Kipling, and George is called Sam Francisco, and because Sykes is such an asshole, he says, I'm not going to introduce my partner to everyone as San Francisco. I'm going to call you George. So he shows that he doesn't really respect George, but Mandy Patinkin is so sweet and lovable. He just wants to be a part of the team. He accepts it. And then, of course, he says, well, because, what was I saying? Sykes is like, who cares what your name sounds like, right? You don't give a fuck. And he's like, agreed. And you don't care that your name Sykes sounds like two words in my language, Sykes, which means excrement and cranium. Shithead. So it just shows how lovable he is. He wants to follow everything by the book. He's a family man. He cares about his wife. He cares about his son. He's so nice and sweet. And the way they butt heads is great. George is by the book. Sykes doesn't give a fuck. He'll do what he wants. And they have great chemistry. And then comes, of course, this scene where they bond over booze. And Sykes is getting drunk off of vodka or bourbon or whatever it is. George is over there. And the newcomers get drunk over sour milk. So, he's choking down the sour milk. And eventually, they just become friends. They're out in the living room. They're telling jokes. And I love the opposite of them. Like I said, George is so straight-laced and innocent. One of the funniest jokes that Sykes has heard, he tells George, he's like, that whole joke where, like, the proctologist says, well, if this is my thermometer, then where's my pen? And then George is like, I don't get it. He has to explain it. He's like, well, where would you think the pen would be, George? He's like, in the man's rectum. Right, the pen's up his ass. George doesn't find it funny. Later on, there's a scene where after all hell's breaking loose, and they're trying to, how would you say, collect themselves. George is like, tell me if you've heard this one. My son told me it's a really funny joke. Why did the chicken cross the road? The lameness of George, air quotes, and Sykes, they work so well together. And one thing about Mandy Patinkin, there's a side story, or the B plot, which is how, the first murder was just one of a series of murders. You find out that the lead villain, Harcourt, I believe his name, William Harcourt, played by Terrence Stamp, General Zod, Neo before Zod. You find out he and all the people that are being murdered were trying to recreate this drug that was given to the newcomers on the slave ship as their only means of happiness. You know what I mean? Because they were so addicted, they were put through the hellish type of work, and then they were given this drug as a reward. And George finds out about this. He's doing his own little side investigation, behind Sykes' back. And and what's great is he doesn't want to tell George. George doesn't want to tell Sykes. And Mandy is so good at being sweet, lovable, and innocent, but holding that secret. And then the more and more the secret is being revealed, the more and more rage comes through George. And there's this great scene where Sykes is tired of George's bullshit, and he locks them both in an elevator, and he says basically, tell me what's going on. And the frustration and the hatred comes out of Mandy Patinkin. He talks about how this killed thousands of his species, and he won't let it happen again. And then the scene where they finally get to the lab, and George just flips his shit. Well, before that, they're going to go to the lab, and this is great because this is how, like I said, George is by the book. Sykes is like, fuck it, I'm going. George is going to leave. He's not even waiting for Matt. And Sykes looks at him. He's like, well, what about procedure? And like I said, this is George, the guy who finds, why did the chicken cross the road funny. He looks at him, he says, fuck procedure, and speeds away. And then we get to the scene where he's in the lab, and he's just going ape shit, threatening to kill the guy there. He just destroys it. Great performance by Mandy Patinkin. Other characters are just kind of there. Like I said, it was cool seeing Terrence Stamp because I love him in Superman 2. Young Guns. I liked him in Young Guns. Even Link. He's interesting in Link. He's just there to be a prim and proper villain. His sidekick is scary as hell. There's a couple detectives that don't like Francisco. They just pick on him. They're just there. The main characters is James Caan and Mandy Patinkin. But based on their performance, great. The makeup is phenomenal. Like I said, they are bald. They have orange dots all over their heads. They have ears like the canals, but they don't have the earlobes or anything like the outer part. It's literally just the hole sunken in. Great look. And then there's a scene where eventually Terrence Stamp, he has like the last container of this drug, and he breaks it open, and he literally just downs it, and it's this real green, nasty like sludge, and it looks like he overdoses. So that's why Sykes looks at him and says, don't worry about him, he OD'd. Then we get this great, stereotypical close up shot of George just going, and the camera shows in. You find out if you overdose on this drug, it changes you, more metamorphoses you, and he looks like a mixture of a newcomer and the fucking Frankenstein monster. And it's a great scene, great makeup. I love how, of course, their DNA is different. There's a scene where they're doing detective work in a bar, and they're trying to find the son of the shop owner that was killed. And it's fun. Like, George has to be the interpreter, and the guy says your mother mates out of season and stuff like that. And James Caan punches him, and he knees him in the nuts. And then he gets up, and he just laughs at him. He says, "Don't they teach you about us in detective school?" And basically, you find out you hit him in the armpits. That's like kicking them in the nuts. That was funny. And then you find out that salt water is like acid to the newcomers, and that's how one of the people is killed. One of the newcomers is killed on a beach, and there's a scene where they have to go investigate. Again, Mandy Patinkin is so good as you're driving towards the beach, getting closer and closer and closer. You already have it been attached to George, how lovable he is, great person, and then the anxiety. Stop the car, please. I need to get out. I need to get out. Please stop the car. Please stop the car. It's great, and right then and there, that's where Sykes starts to realize how human he really is, meaning George. And again, that just helps with their friendship and their partnership. And eventually, with all these tropes, eventually saltwater will come into the finale, and George has to injure himself with saltwater to save Sykes. Great scene, and I fucking love it. It shows that they have come to respect each other, love each other, and forge a great partnership. I absolutely adore this movie. I've loved it since I was a kid. Again, great performances by James Caan and Mandy Patinkin. I love the makeup effects. Again, just the great buddy chemistry stuff. Good comedy. I love like when they go to the food court or whatever, the food cart, and they accidentally get their food mixed up. And James Caan opens it up and he's like, "Oh, this is yours," and and George is like, there's like, "What is that?" He's like, "This is beaver," and he's like, "You want to try something?" And James Caan's like, "No, gross," and he takes his own food. He's out, he just chucks it in the trash, and then you find out that they have to eat it raw. So it's just funny, banter and stuff like that. Great performances, great action, great message, great bonding moments. Absolutely love this movie. Highly underrated. You never really hear people talk about this movie anymore. So I think it's kind of flown under the radar. And that's why I kind of wanted to give it a spotlight. Sadly, after losing James Caan, everyone was, God bless him, everyone was talking about The Godfather and Elf and stuff like that. And I thought Alien Nation deserved to have its own little spotlight. And it gave it gave birth to a television series that was well received and canceled too early. And then the Fox continued the storyline from that TV series into 5 made-for-TV movies. It's got a huge cult following, and I thought it deserved to be spotlighted. So highly, highly recommend James Caan, Godfather, Elf, Misery, Alien Nation. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Comment below. All that jazz. Tell me if you've seen this movie. If you like it, you hate it. Have you seen the TV show? Have you seen the TV movies? What's your favorite James Caan movie? What's your favorite Mandy Patinkin movie? I'm sure you're going to pick this or Princess Bride because I don't know what else the fuck he's been in other than that. And Dick Tracy. Click the bell, like and subscribe. All that jazz. Got more stuff planned. I'm rambling and cheers. Rest in peace, James Caan.